Welcome back to RHAP, We Know Scripted TV, where today we are chatting about Stranger Things, all of Stranger Things, all of it, volume 2 and 3, and everything that came before. My name is Chris, but of course, I'm not alone. I'm actually joined by someone I'm very excited to chat with, one of my favorite people to talk about TV with, and I have roped you in to chat about Stranger Things finale. It's DM Philly. Philly, how you doing?
I'm so good, Grace. I'm delighted to be here with you talking about Stranger Things. I can't believe it's all over. I was a like day one Stranger Things guy. You can like go back and dredge my Twitter feed. I started like tweeting about the show a year before it aired. They put the preview out with the van flip and that season one energy. I was just like, this show is made for me. I'm here for it. And it's been an odyssey, Grace. So I'm psyched to be here talking with you about it.
Before the first season, that was like a couple years ago, right? That's the thing that everybody says
Yeah.
about Stranger Things. It's been like, I can't believe it's over so soon.
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
old enough that it doesn't feel like it just started yesterday to me.
Mhm.
Like
You
the
didn't have
10
a
years.
you didn't have a beard when it started, right? That's how long it's
No,
been?
no, I was a young
Oh.
lad. I was a wee
Mhm.
lad. I mean, I've been through a lot. Like life's been like a real
Well
journey over the last 10 years. We all have.
well, and I also feel like this show, for you in particular, probably does transport you back to a time, that the show actually took place. Is that fair to say that you're like
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. So we've talked about this a bunch on our podcast, on my coverage over at Screen and Page, but I'm like right of an age with Holly, right? I'm born in 1980. So I'm a little bit younger than the main kids proper, but like I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1989, like as they are
Mm,
closing out the series is kind of the beginning of my matriculation into sort of their childhood, right?
right.
Like I was a young teenager and adolescent into the 90s. So it's been an absolute time capsule for me since the very beginning. I mean, it's
Mhm.
basically like jumping into the DeLorean and hitting 88.8. And to that extent, I've had a lot of fun, like really revisiting. We've rewatched all the seasons and
You
just
did.
going back for like all of the Easter eggs and how much Jaws is in here and how much Close
Mhm.
Encounters of the Third Kind and Stand By Me and E.T. and all of it. And like, I'm born and bred on that stuff, much like the Duffers, like the Stevens, King, and Spielberg. These were my teachers as a child.
It's funny. I feel like it's actually very fun to chat with you about this in particular because you're American. You're like love. I'm the opposite. I'm Canadian.
Yep.
We didn't really go to the movies. We like would rent movies on VA, from the video store, but weren't really like a movie household. I didn't really see Jaws or Star Wars or I actually, we told the story. My mom told me it to me. We were talking about that, the fact that my mom, they rented the VHS player, which I didn't know. In my
Oh,
head, it's kind of, that thing of
amazing.
like, it must
Yes.
be a phenomenon. Dr. Amanda will tell me what this is at some point, in which like you kind of forget that the technology hasn't always been around. It's like,
Yes.
what do you mean you didn't have a VHS player in your house? Like that's what we had. It was like, no,
Yes.
pre that you would like, and the idea also of like not being able to see a movie that was in theaters if you didn't go see it in movie
Was
theaters.
such a different paradigm. I mean, when we talk about like the monoculture in like entertainment, like it really, there just was so much less, and you had so much less accessibility and
Right.
like carte blanche access. This like on demand existence, I think, is the real fundamental change of the modern age, right?
So my mom, they rented. Actually, a friend said like, "Hey, we finished watching the stuff that we watched. Do you want to borrow the VHS player that we rented before we return it?" So they did. It was this big hulking thing, and they watched ET. And my mom and dad fell asleep while my brother, who was about 3.5, watched it and was terrified of
Oh,
ET.
yeah.
Is the story that they tell. So yeah. Anyway, Stranger Thing. People weren't here to listen to me talk about my brother's horror stories growing up. They're here to listen about Stranger Things. I'm actually very glad, again, in terms of the dichotomy between you and I, because Taryn and I talked a little bit about Stranger Things. Mike and I did a volume 1 recap. Mike, very busy. I don't know if people know, but the Traders and Survivor 50 are coming up. So Mike is very busy. And so, Philly, I reached out to you. And the thing, when I chatted with Mike, I think Mike and I were both in agreement that was a little bit like, yeah, there are things that I don't love about the volume 1, but for the most part, like, we're here now, so who cares? Of like, yeah, the kids are old, whatever. Like it takes a long time to make a show, and there's been writer strikes and all whatever. And for the most part, what we got pretty good. I think there's a very clear dichotomy between the kids who are pretty good actors and the ones who I think are not as good of an actor. And that was sort of like and I thought volume 1 ramped up to a place. I was like, this is exciting. This feels like finale material. Taryn
There's
and
a
I,
real strong end to that volume 1 segment, right?
Yeah.
You come out of episode 4 like shot out of a cannon. Even if you're kind of tepid and there's some stuff that's frustrating you, you're not like the hugest Will Byers fan. Like that was pretty high energy coming into volume 2. Yeah.
Yeah, my joke was like, I was like, man, Will was really good at it. Oh, he didn't have to speak or do any dialogue. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why. Anyway,
it's very physical.
Regardless,
he was channeling his Harry Potter, Grace.
That's right. So I chatted with Taryn very briefly. We did a little bit of a spoiler section on Stranger Things, and I think that I was higher on Stranger Things than Taryn was. Taryn was very much not happy with the way that it ended, and so I was a little worried as I was like thinking about who I might chat to. That like, not that I'm going to be. I'm not going to hate on this thing. I think I am like at peace with what it was, and actually think like for what it was is pretty good, and like everyone's expectations of things are higher than they like often live up to.
You are a professional commentator on TV, and it was certainly a flawed final season and a flawed finale. And there's been fair critiques and criticisms that I think have been leveled about it. And I feel that energy of, I think, a lot of people talking about the show, like, gosh, do we hate it? Do we not like it? Are we in a little bit of like an echo chamber of like not being super positive on it? I think I have a very different take than you. And I'm psyched because we have not really discussed the season much at all. We like play D&D together. We hang out, we talk, we like stay in touch, but we have not unpacked our like emotional fallout of Stranger Things yet together.
And I think to the most part, and I think I always feel bad like starting with criticism, so I'm just gonna do it, but I am gonna do it like very briefly, which is I think a lot of my critiques hold the same, which is that I think that I felt very much taken out of this thing, which is I think the biggest reason that happened is because this is a show that was so immersive in season 1. Like when I was going back and rewatching season 1, and these are like literally small children fighting like demogorgons and like playing D&D, like it felt like I was watching the thing, and that was really happening, and I felt sucked in. And there's so much of the last season, and I think in this last batch especially, that felt like I was seeing behind the curtain, or I was able to see the green screen, as it were, you know? And so that it was just really hard to not constantly be like, oh, I've been pulled out of it again. So that, but that doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter. It does matter in terms of like how I felt about it. I was not like blown away and swept up on it. I really was trying to see this in theaters. I don't know if I would love to hear if people who saw it in theaters felt like generally the theater going experience was very enjoyable. Yes.
Saw it in theaters, and she had invited me to go with her. But in these winter months, I heat my house with a wood stove, Grace. And I was like, I'd much rather just sit in front of my fire with a pile of cats.
I was up north in Northern Ontario being warmed by an actual fireplace. So very much was like, I don't need to go to the.
It was quite a vibe for me sitting here alone. So I think that part of what I had said to Taylor prior to her going to the actual finale was that after volume 2, there was a lot of negative feedback, right? I mean, episode 7 got like review bombed, all of like the Will coming out stuff. There's a lot to like unpack there, the good and the bad of it or whatever.
I thought it was too gay, but you know, that's just me.
It's very fair. It's very fair. Very fair. At the end, I think there was a lot of like very kind, like well-meaning criticism of that scene, and a lot of just like, you know, hate, right? Because that's like what we do nowadays.
Yes.
Nonetheless, I think that like coming into that finale, what I had said to Taylor is like, look, at this point, everybody who's showing up on their New Year's Eve to watch this finale in the theater is pretty pot committed. Like if you came out of episode 7 pissed, you're probably returning those tickets if you got them. You are scalping them. Like you're not trying to go spend your New Year's Eve getting more pissed, right? So her feedback after the fact was that she has never had such a kind of collective emotional experience in a theater before. That they were fighting for their lives together. The snot was trickling. They were blubbering and crying and grasping on each other. People crying out loud. Like cuts to black. There was a little bit of like, Jesus Christ, really? You know, there was some frustration expressed, but the overall sentiment from the theater, according to like, you know, my research, which is quite minimal and specific with one person, was that it was a really positive communal experience. It sounded to me a little like Return of the King was the most kind of similar experience
Mm.
that she sort of evoked for me when she was talking about it. I mean, you went down a couple of things, and I think that there's a lot of like fair critiques to level at season 5. I think a lot of people fell in love with the show in season 1 because it was so immersive. Like the
Yes.
Duffer Brothers, in all of their original concepts and their drafts and their pitches, they were coming from an emotional place. They were trying to capture the emotion of Elliot and E.T. in the Misty Mountains. They were trying to capture the emotion of Stuttering George with Pennywise in the sewers. We all float down here. They were trying to capture the emotion of like so many of these classic 80s films. And I think that they really do. And a lot of the kids were kind of like effortlessly incredible in season 1. Like, I think when you
Yes.
go back and look at
Yes.
Finn Wolfhard, like he
Yes.
rounds that show out so hard, and you can like critique Finn's work in season 5 all you want, but season 1 Finn was like a really strong performer. I think some of them have maintained more consistency. When you look at like a Gaten Matarazzo, right, and a Joe Keery, like some of these guys have charm, and it just seems like
I
effortless
think
for
you can
them.
tell who's been working at like gotten gigs that have been able to like Gayton was going off and doing theater. Finn Wolf, even Finn, I know people have problem. I actually think he's very good. He's
I think
like
he's
he's
pretty good
directing
too.
his own movies. Like he's working at a level, you know, Maya Hawke, obviously, I think very good in the show as
Incredible,
well.
yeah.
So like I think you can sort of see the ones who have been filling the time with acting and ones who but you know, I don't really honestly I don't again, I don't really. I honestly do think, and my feeling coming out of the end was like it's a little bit of Arrested Development, Dead Dove Do Not Eat. It was a little bit like I
Yeah.
don't know what I expected,
Okay.
which is, and I don't mean, and I actually that makes it sound more negative than I am because I
It
actually
does.
do think that overall the like plot point, there's so many characters in the show, there's so much happening. Overall, I feel pretty much I'm like, yeah, good finale. That's good. We did it. We wrapped up a lot of the things that I felt like needed to be wrapped up, and we did it, and it was fun. And there's moments that are like very much very fun and stuff that didn't work as well for me. And overall, I feel like it was like I did like it. I guess I'm trying hard not to feel like I'm super negative, and I feel like I keep going negative.
I don't think that you're coming off super negative. I mean,
Okay.
my big thing that I was going to say, just in terms of like the variance in the acting, I think a lot of that does have to do with the writing. And I think that like the Duffers have had a lot of like harsh accusations thrown at them this week. You're terrible writers. You don't care about anything. What about who unlocked the door in season 1? What about the demagogues? What about the water and the upside down? There's so many like critical frustrations about the lore, the world building, the like dangling participles, the unfinished storylines. What about the military? What about the no repercussions for anybody? How do they kill so many soldiers and everybody's just happily graduating a month later? I think some of like the variance in the acting and the performances that we saw comes down to the dialogue and the writing. I think that the Duffers are great with ideas. I've heard a lot of people talk about how like they are great pitch masters, right? They pitch like an incredible show. They've got some great high concepts ideas. This is not like, you know, Baron, Bo, and Yanta. They are not like the flawless execution. We're not watching a Vince Gilligan show. We are not watching a Damon Lindelof show that like we care that much necessarily about the fine print. This show has always been an adventure story about a group of children. And at the end of the day, that's where it ended. And so when I came into this final season, like, are there things that don't work for me? When like we drive a box van with 20 people in it past like an armed position taking fire and nobody catches like a single gunshot wound, Philly's gonna like complain about that a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think I could have been more emotionally satisfied with where they landed this ship. Like, I think that last hour of the finale, the epilogue into the coda of everything in the basement, it's pretty flawless, Grace. Like, I don't think they could have like threaded the needle better there. And they might have tried to like cross some more T's and dot some more I's about like, what about Dr. K? What about the military? What about? But like, I actually don't care about any of that. At the end of this, I wanted like emotional resolution for my characters, and to the like extent that like people felt it was a little bit too much of a happy ending, like show me one of those 80s Amblin Entertainment movies where the kids die, Grace. Like they don't die in ET. ET is like the saddest ending of film, right? It will like crush your heart and break you in terms of like the emotional fallout. Nobody's dead. We just have to say goodbye. And that's a really hard thing to do. And I think that like in some of my reading around the reactions over the course of the week, I've really come to recognize how there's a vast young audience for this show, that it feels like Stranger Things is their first true, oh my God, I live for this TV show project, right? And there's a lot of like emotional connection that feels like the frustration that people had at the end of Lost, where they were so invested for 10 years and felt like, gosh, don't you guys care as much as I do about these details? And like, they just kind of don't. The Duffers kind of don't to a degree. They cared about the emotional payoff for these characters. And that like mileage still may vary. But to my 2 cents, like I did a lot of ugly crying and I came away from the end of this thing like appreciative of the ambiguity and like satisfied with the totality of 5 seasons of Stranger Things.
Okay, I think this was a really good point, which is I do think the epilogue is really good. I think the
It's
like 40-minute.
You can tell they like wrote that many years ago and that got workshopped, right?
Yeah, and so there was Taryn had said that he felt like the ending was a little How I Met Your Mother-ish, where it was like, oh yeah, like they clearly knew that this is what they would do forever. And then the thing is that like as the show became so successful and they added more content, like literally more hours to the show, the ending feels like that's Taryn's issue with the finale. Although he does say that like because of the one pro you have between there being so much time in between season 1 and season 5 is that you can do like a flashback to like these kids and they are like kids that we watched 10
They're
years
children.
ago.
Yeah.
And it's really impactful. So Taryn's big problem with the finale does seem to be, I think, a lot of the like it doesn't really make sense, you know, like in terms of like 11 sacrificing herself. That's we'll get into that more. I don't feel that way. I actually love the pieces of the ending and sort of every individual character's especially basically from the moment they kill Vecna to the credits rolling. I would totally agree that
I
that
can
is
even like pick
extremely
some
well
nits
done.
about like escaping the Upside Down. Like, how did you guys not anticipate that the military was still waiting there? But everything from like the graduation to me to the end is like, these are all really great scenes, I think, that have such like emotional payoff for my investment after 10 years.
Yeah, the thing that I think is actually really interesting about the show is, and I'm gonna say something I'm gonna start off, and I feel like apologies for it because it's gonna sound more blasphemous than I would like it to be, but the show and the way that it actually sort of feels a little like there was a lot of masters to serve in
Yes.
this finale
Mhm.
feels extremely Dungeons and Dragons.
It's exactly what Taylor and I said, and I think that that's part of like the happy ending. Like certainly Dungeons and Dragons can end badly, but I think with contemporary D&D, not to get on like too much of a diatribe, like if the group really devotes themselves to like we will leave no one behind, we all survive this. Very often they can, and it felt very Dungeons and Dragons to me in that way.
So for me, the piece of the why it feels very D&D is, I mean, in a game of D&D, you can have anywhere, you know, like from 3 players to I don't know what's a big table. You've you know
9.
like 9. You know, that's a lot of people, and combat becomes a thing. Like D&D is very much a combat game, and so this idea of like everybody feeling like in a moment, it's all like telling everyone's story of equal weight and you're coming together and then have and like you know you and I have seen this where like you're in this big epic moment and you like you're like, oh, I'm the fight, I attack with my sword, it's like, oh, you hit, you deal this much damage, the monster's still alive, and then somebody, I had this Rich, I have a character who I would often get a killing blow with my like turtle shell with my turtle
Yeah.
familiar who would like then attack, and that would be the thing. And there's this way in which like I think to some degree the way that like D&D is set up, because it's a game you play with all these other people, that there's a way in which like it is a beautiful storytelling game, but also like when you actually have to like stop down and play by the rules in moments, it becomes a little clunkier and
It's
like
pedantic.
yeah. So what I feel like happens is like the actual like everything to get up to the moment where we've like defeated Vecna and then we come back or whatever felt very much like what it feels a final D&D battle is like, that like as a dungeon master, you're trying to like, how do I have this character have a moment and this person and this person, but then actually, oh, this person actually like has no connection to the bad guy is the person who actually got the killing blow, or what, all of that things going on. But then actually, like, often in the epilogue of a story, you then like almost like turn it over to the person to be like, okay, now tell me what happens here. And they tell often like a very beautiful story because they're no longer contained by like the rules of the game to some degree. You know what I mean?
And Matt Mercer, the Critical Role fans will know, how do you want to do this, right? That killing blow. It's the moment of like the DM handing the authority of the storytelling over to the player to be like, we are not bounded by the rules anymore. It doesn't matter how many hit points. Now you can like narrate and give us like this satisfying conclusion. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so I feel like more so than like actually killing Vecna, which I do think is a pretty satisfying moment. We could talk about that a little bit in terms of like how they actually do it and what ends up happening to kill Vecna. But I think like once we get to the moment of like, I know Taryn's point about, and people online generally, the point about 11 sort of like sacrificing herself is like, why did she actually have to do that? And even if she did it, would the military really like let them go? To me, the like story of like, don't let this happen again, like the self-sacrifice
is really important.
Yeah. It does work for me, really. It does. And I think even in the show, we constantly had to like suspend our disbelief. So I'm willing to continue to do it at the end of the show when like 11 is going to sacrifice herself. And then I guess like there's some argument in terms of like, oh, there's no ambiguity to the finale. I love the ambiguity of like, is 11 around or not?
Very Minority Report, right? I mean,
it's very Minority
there's a lot of like shades of Stand By Me and Dreyfus at the keyboard at the end, even of like Stuttering George, like, but it's enormously Minority Report. And I really love the choice there. Like the Duffers, they've done a ton of interviews already. They did a long sit down with Josh Horowitz on Happy, Sad, Confused. They've talked a lot about the idea that they have a clear ending in mind, that they talked to Millie about what they think 11's fate was, and that's not for them to say. I mean, that's like part of what you and I love about art, right? That's this relationship where these guys created this thing and now it's ours, and it's going to be ours till the end of time, and it's ours to interpret and analyze, be frustrated with, be satisfied with, as we all will. So to that extent, like I really love the way that they present it. And like, part of my frustration, because I think that like they sell the front half of it pretty well, that I did believe, okay, she went into the thing, she dies in the void with everybody else, she dies in the Upside Down with the pregnant ladies, with Kali. And I was pretty upset that I'm like, man, I don't like the idea that I've spent 10 years and 5 seasons watching a show where the teenage, like tormented protagonist kills herself at the end. I do think it is like a heroic, selfless sacrifice. And to the Dungeons and Dragons of it all, Grace, like, I'm the first to like throw my character into a fire for a good, like dramatic martyring of heroism at the end. I love this, I'm okay with this, but I don't like that as the story being told for 11 across this show. So in that way, like, I love Mike's alternate history presentation, and to the like no repercussions of it all. I don't want to steal credit for this. It's not an original idea. I think I'm taking it from The Watch and Chris and Andy maybe, but somebody had posited that like Murray, who is at this point trained as like an international karate expert and smuggler, probably was able to blackmail the military Rorschach style of like, listen, I got envelopes. Like if any of these people start vanishing or end up in military gulags, like the Chicago Tribune is getting a manila envelope of photographs of Demodog parts. Like, you guys are going down. The military had like a great incentive to hide all that. I get that like none of this being shown is kind of unsatisfying for a certain type of fan of the show, but I was so like not prioritizing any of that to like the 11 and the ambiguity. I'm back to your point of like, I think it's a great sacrifice. The Duffer Brothers talked about it being like this incredible selfless sacrifice to prevent more children, innocent children, from being abused and exploited the way that she was. And that's an act of like pure heroism. And it's really great. I think they could have done a better job, like communicating that. Maybe Kali was so nefarious this season that I think it was sort of easy to like write off her plan, and the pregnant women were kind of a footnote, and yada yada yada. Like that was, none of that was really an emphasis, right? So I think it feels a little unsatisfying for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think you could have done, and I actually think it probably has to come more through like Henry
Yes.
and 11. Like I think that it probably has to like that they need to have this thing about like, because it's the proof of what could be if 11 doesn't sacrifice herself. I'm of the opinion that I kind of only like the sacrifice once we have this idea that maybe she didn't sacrifice herself. That's the and I actually my like headcanon is that the stuff that Mike says is not true. My
Oh, I
my
love that. You're of the Sadie Sink mindset that this is
Mhm.
like Sadie Sink was on Fallon last week and she was like, look, I think she's dead. I think
Yeah.
that Mike tells this last story. So much of the ending, that door closing, this is the metaphor of childhood, right? In that basement, they are children. They get to like play with childish things, live in their imagination. The closing of the door as Mike goes up the stairs is the matriculation into adulthood, young adulthood, right? And
Mhm.
that notion that Max is like, look, that's the last thing they get to have as children together. That's like this
Yeah.
last soothing platitude that Mike offers his friends who are
Yes.
still children in that basement together before they go up the stairs. And they can like carry that last piece of their childhood with them as a kind of like Linus comfort blanket to appease
Yes.
the pain through
Yes.
the rest of their life at like the hole left from this experience. And that's like beautiful and
I
transcendent. Like
and
it
it
really is. It's great.
and that's completely my sensibility in terms of it's so sad and it's so beautiful. So that's what I choose to believe is like Mike tells a story, whether or not he chooses to believe it is or not. And he's like, it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter to me. I guess I could figure out whether or not I think he thinks that's true or not. I fully, in my head canon,
See, I
11
love that
is
because
dead.
I have like firmly rooted myself in the other place. Like in talking to Taylor about this a little bit, I recounted like I remember learning that Santa Claus was not real as an 8-year old.
Wait,
And
what?
at 8 years old, I know, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah,
Spoilers
it's
for the
okay. Uh-huh.
RHAP community. At
Uh-huh.
8 years old, I was old enough to like know to be pretty cynical of my belief, right?
Hmm.
Like it wasn't true faith anymore. It was like I'm
Hmm.
hanging on to this thing
Hmm.
because, and there was this very real thing for me at the time of acknowledging, like, gosh, I'm going to have to spend the totality of the rest of my life like in the knowledge that this beautiful thing that I have believed in for so long is not real. And
Hmm.
that's a little depressing. So if I can opt into the fantasy as a man who like has made his day job a night job of running Dungeons and Dragons and like living in these fantasy spaces, like I'm pretty successful at nurturing my Peter Pan complex, Grace. And to that
Yes.
extent, like
Yes.
I want to believe that she could never be with them. The Duffers have talked about this notion that like she is a physical manifestation of magic, of childlike wonder, of that Spielbergian element that they were trying to present. So face forward of this show across 5 seasons, this childlike wonder and horror at the impossible and the ununderstandable. And she could never remain in their lives once they
Hmm.
have to transition into adults. But the idea that she can go have her own life, that her story does not have to end in like the ignominy of like a 17-year-old's death on the other side of like a dark void all alone, that comforts me, right? And in
Hmm.
the early days of 2026, I'm looking for comfort wherever I can
Hmm.
get it,
Fair
Grace, you
enough.
know? So like I'm holding on to that. Like I had said, like that story to me, Grace, felt like Mike took an immovable rod out
Hmm.
in the middle
Yes.
of a D&D session and he pushed the button. And that story is like the immovable rod for the fans of Stranger Things for us to like grab hold of and hold on to for as long as we can, you know?
Yep. Fair. I appreciate anybody who's there, but I'm in the no. Give me the sad one.
I love that take too. I'm
Yeah.
usually like such a glass half empty.
Hmm.
I tend to think you're right, but I like
Uh,
to be where I am.
okay. In terms of like the story of I mean, like it sort of like dive right deep, which is basically like we have all these different groups who are trying to accomplish some point of the mission to basically get in there and kill Vecna or be somewhere to like, make sure that Vecna is dead. I feel like we talked mostly just about like the 11 of it all. I guess yeah, did the uh Callie stuff I feel like that was like I thought it was so fun when she returned in the first batch, and then yeah, I do feel like it was a little like, oh, they like fully she's like so unlikable, which I feel like felt like a missed opportunity to not like redeem although I guess she is redeemed ish by the
She kind of is. I mean, I think there's like a really interesting thing. So I had done a rewatch of all the original 4 seasons leading up to season 5. So I was really like supercharged coming into the show. Taylor and I had done a bunch of like discussion about Kali, about the Lost Sister, which was the lowest rated episode of the series up until the review bombing of episode 7, right? So I love that they brought her back. The Duffers, again, like I don't mean to be like their spokespeople here, but they were like, look, we wanted that storyline to pay off. Like there was a reason we introduced her. We wanted it to go somewhere. We felt good about bringing her back. And then part of the Kali's perspective through all of season 5 is they talked about like the struggles in the writer's room to come to a resolution, specifically on Eleven's story. And the idea that like Kali was advocating for half of the writers' room that were like, yo, there's no way she gets to have a happy ending. Right. And Hopper's speech, specifically in season 5, was the advocation from the other part of the writers' room of like, this girl has been through the ringer. She deserves a happy ending more than anybody. And I think that what's interesting is like, life's not that clean or simple. Like I appreciated the reintroduction of Kali. I liked just that, like, that wasn't like a dead end that we went into in season 2, that we did circle back to it. It's also like, if we're going to follow the logic of the military, if Kali's out there, of course they would try to find her. So I like that, like there's more to the deeper world building and the kind of logic of the military operation there. You know, she was a little one note, but I think that comes back to like some of the critiques about the writing, which is like, we're in an 8-episode season that's got too many masters to serve, man. There's 1,000 characters,
40 characters. Yeah.
And like, there's only so much that we could do for everybody. So I think that like, she wasn't as well realized as she could have been, but she was used pretty effectively through the season.
Okay, let me like hop. Well, I was going to talk to Hopper next, but I was going to say hop around, which is like let's go through like sort of like these like buckets of kit that I'll put in, which is like next. I feel like most tend like related to 11 and then Kali is really Hopper, who sort of like journeys with her there, and sort of does give that speed of like of wanting of letting her live, and then attached to Hopper is sort of Joyce. You get the moment where Joyce ends up being the one to like decapitate Vecna, and then Hopper and Joyce are like together at the end. What do you make of that?
I love Hopper and Joyce together at the end.
Me too.
I think that like Joyce deserves a happy ending. I think part of Hopper's story, I think part of what I talked about with Taylor is like, Hopper's not going to die. Steve's not going to die. These are men who, like the story of Hamilton, like the story of the Wheel of Time, like death is lighter than a feather. Duty is heavier than a
They're not Bob. They're not Bob.
They're not Bob.
They're not Bob.
But like death is an escape, right? Like dying is easy, young man. Living is harder. This is what Jim Hopper had to learn across 5 seasons, right? Yeah. And I think it was like a beautiful character arc for that character. I think Joyce is like, you know, I relate to the single mom of the 80s. This is the paradigm I grew up in. And like Joyce has just been so like beset upon on all sides since like word 1 of this thing that like, God bless, they deserve some happiness. Did you know the Montauk thing? Are you like familiar with the Easter egg that's there? Their original pitch for Stranger Things, the show was supposed to be called Montauk, and it was going to be based in Montauk, Long Island. All of like the supernatural experimentation was going to be tied to like these military compounds that are out there on Montauk. Right. So like all of this, they're going to retire to Montauk. The secondary thing is like Chief Hopper is Chief Brody from Jaws, right? Like the more you think about it, the more it like is perfectly overlapped. So the idea that he's going to retire to like a quiet beach town is like insanely delightful to the Easter eggs of it all. So I just loved all that. I do feel like, you know, I love the speech he has with Mike, Grace, because I think that it's part of what him like intellectualizing what he has had to learn. And part of what Eleven's saying to him is like, dude, your little girl didn't have a choice, but like I do. And I am a grown autonomous person at this point who's going to make my decision based on what you have taught me about right and wrong. And that's like really good, man. That's like a really like full circle moment of storytelling that I find like just so deeply satisfying that I've seen some people complain, why isn't Jim like, why is Hopper so okay at the end of this? And part of it is like, dude, he's had to like internalize all of this, like not to get too new agey with the woo-woos guys, but like he's actualizing on like all of the shit that he has learned across 5 seasons, which is like, I can live with grief I don't need to like drive myself off of a cliff. There are still like other things in this world that are meaningful, that can give me joy, and I can like honor the memory of my daughters by staying alive. And that message that he gives Mike of like, don't be me, Mike Wheeler.
Yeah.
Don't like wake up in a trailer surrounded by beer cans, coughing up Marlboro Reds and your tidy whities like 20 years from now. Like, you don't need to go down that road. I thought that was all really great. So I like the kind of like thread closing on Jim.
I love it, and I love Joyce cutting off the head of Vecna, the person who has messed up her life by like stealing Will back in season 1.
She gets the full Ellen
so
Ripley
good.
line. Stay away
So
from
good.
her, you bitch. Shades of Molly Weasley.
So
So
good.
I will say, like, dude, they brought Winona Ryder for like an hour and 20 minutes through that episode without saying a single word, just so she can decapitate that monster.
love it.
The other side.
I love it.
I heard, like, I think Joanna and Mallory on the House of R, like, they had that 45-year-old woman climb up the radio tower with these
Who
high
cares?
school.
Nope, that was a stunt double. Who cares? Love it. As the best.
I loved it too. I loved it too. It worked. It worked.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like, well then Mike. Mike gets. I guess I really love the like Purple Rain sequence. I thought the soundtrack in the finale is really great. It's like, between heroes, and we get Landslide in there. Purple Rain. I think it's great. I
When
like the
Doves
moment.
Cry into Purple Rain, like getting
it's real
2
good.
Prince songs, and they're both songs like from the soundtrack of Purple Rain, is a 1984 film by Prince, right? I mean, that's a coup. I talked about it with Taylor a little bit. Like, look, it's Purple Rain. I'm not trying to like impugn Purple Rain, you guys, but Prince is like not necessarily like my taste in music so much. I could appreciate it without like loving it. The Landslide needle drop like destroyed me.
So good. Me too.
Robin on like the radio, Rockin' Robin, Landslide starts playing. I hear Stevie Nicks. Now I'm like ugly crying, like clutching my cats, like, please. I did think like the needle drops were pretty impressive. Yeah.
Okay, we talked about Mike gets the wrapping up the campaign. Would you like Strahd? We're playing Curse. We're playing replacing Curse of Strahd. We're playing Ravenloft.
I6. So you might not know this. So I am running a Dragonlance game for you, Grace. Dragonlance was created by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Strahd, first appearance, official publication. I6 is the adventure for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 1984, written and published by Tracy and Laura Hickman. Tracy Hickman and his wife. Tracy Hickman is like essential. This is the creation of Ravenloft. It's the first like publishing of this place. Interestingly, like Vecna is not published in an actual like Dungeons and Dragons supplement until 1990.
Yeah, all of this D&D stuff are like sorcerers aren't a thing until whatever.
But I just love like the Vecna lore of it all, and the fact that like Vecna like officially is released in an adventure where the players kill him, and then he comes back in Ravenloft. So the Ravenloft tie in the Strahd, and Vecna's lieutenant Kaz is a vampire, and people thought Eddie was going to come back as a vampire. And Strahd's a vampire. There's a lot of good stuff. They called Dr. K a vampire. Kali did like it all connects brilliantly. I could do a 2-hour podcast like just on the end credits and Strahd, Grace.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Where should we go? Max and Lucas. Max was kind of the person I got fooled by in terms of, I saw there was an article that came out. I can't remember when it came out. Might have been after volume 2. And it said like Sadie Sink reacts to Max's, like ending or whatever. And I was like, oh, I guess Max died. I guess so completely got me. Max, not dead, very much, alive. Max being sort of like the children whisperer, like being in there escorting out the other kids. I really like that. I feel like Lucas has always probably been a smidge underserved in this show. He's the least serviced of any of the
but he's a rock
characters.
I think Caleb is like really a good actor, and I think that Lucas is just like a rock in the group. I hate that, like, the one black friend in the group is like the most marginalized of the 4 of them. It is a bit of a bummer, but I do love the relationship with he and Max. And what I kind of love about it is like all these stupid high school couples break up except for him and Max, right? Like I know there was a lot of like investment in the shipping, you guys, and I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but I do like the idea that like only one of these many high school sweethearts is actually going to like make it into the future. That kind of carries to me,
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about Will very briefly then as well. Will, I mean, for what it's worth, I think my take on the episode 7 stuff is it's super important, and yet I don't think it was I both like love and felt a little bit like, oh, this could be better. That's my feeling in terms of the Will stuff.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, you go to the Mike scene specifically in this episode, like the best friend line is as corny
Yeah,
as corny gets. It is
yeah,
delivered ineffectively and it kind of like neuters the scene. There's like a Boromir angle there of like, friends, I don't think so. Brothers. Like, I
yeah.
think there was like an angle that like that all could have worked. But at the same time, like, look, like I talked a little bit about like, and I don't know what your 2 cents is on this, Grace. I always try to be like cautious when I weigh my opinion on this kind of stuff, but I know there was like a lot of frustration around like the Byler shippers and the
Yeah,
queer
boo,
baiting
they're
behind the
wrong.
mill.
Boo, they're
So I think that
wrong.
like the
Who cares?
representation of the
Yeah.
show has been extraordinary. Like I think
Yes, agreed.
Robin's coming out in season 4, 2, 3
Agreed.
is like exceptional, man. That's one of like the
100%.
best coming out scenes I've ever seen
I
for as bad
100%
as
agree.
Will's might have been. I think that like I really appreciate, not for
Yeah.
nothing, but there is like a very real element of like these children grew up on television. That's pretty unenviable. We all know the horror stories of like child actors and like the many ways that goes bad. There have been a bunch of documentaries in the last year just
Yeah.
talking about that. So I give every one of this child cast, especially, like all the blessings in the world to like fumble around and miss the mark and like do these scenes. And the Duffer Brothers talked about Noah Schnapp, like really pushed them to have that scene with Mike, that there needed to be some closure. And I think that was
Yeah.
a good instinct, whether the scene was like effective for you or not. I
I
liked that they like gave
Yeah.
Will some time in the spotlight this season. And I appreciated that, even if it wasn't my favorite stuff of the season.
You know what I'll tell you? I actually the one I didn't I just felt like the coming out to everybody moment it was a little bit ineloquent. I actually really like the scene with him and Mike. So I actually and the other thing too is even if I thought it was a little clumsy and whatever, I think like I can't understate how important it is that it's in a show that is basically the biggest show in the world to have a moment where like a kid comes out to everybody on the show and they're all like, dude, we love you. Like I can't undersell that actually is like very important. And even if I don't think the actual scene worked in the way I thought I wanted it to work, doesn't matter. It was in the show. Phenomenal. And I really like the scene where like him and like Mike reaffirms that they're friends. And then so sort of like Dustin, Steve stuff. We want to go that we're like we get
I
to like
loved it. I
me too.
really liked Justin having to carry the grief of Eddie this season and like not dealing with it well. I think that like it's been great. Some of it was like a little bit clunky. I think that like Steve was like a little bit too aggressive. But man, come on! I'm like pumping my fist cheering when the two of them get to like go like attack Shelob at the end. Like
Sam.
Dustin literally got to be Sam to
Right.
Eddie's Frodo, right?
Right.
And it's just like such a cool moment. That stinger of the two of them are going to go on a camping trip. Dustin in his Chandler Bing vest at the library, Grace. Like, come on, man. Gaten Matarazzo is like a gem. Dustin and Steve are incredible. I really liked what they were able to like do this season in terms of like, I don't know. I remember being that age and like getting in conflicts like that with my peer groups. And it's not like easy to reconcile that. Sometimes you end up like butting heads and kicking the shit out of each other before you're like, yo, I love you, man.
I know you're so annoyed by them. I remember I have these two buddies that they were such good friends of mine. I worked with them at an outdoor ed center, and they came back from drinking one night and they like went to like roll over and give me I was sitting on a couch like the door behind, and they came in and they rolled over and they completely destroyed my laptop, and I was so mad at them. And all they were trying to do was like hug me, and I was like, and then they broke my laptop. I was like, F you guys, I hate you.
Grace, my very first laptop, I had my drunken friend like lean over to give me a high five. He knocked over a 2-liter bottle of Coke, poured the whole thing right into the keyboard, fried the laptop. I watched the screen like,
and all of us were too poor. All of us were too poor to replace the thing. So like, who was gonna like nothing? There's nothing we could do. I just had a broken laptop. Anyway, I love them and I hated them at the exact same time. So I felt like very real. I was like, this is working for me. They're like butting heads and they'll come back together. Okay, then we get Jonathan and Nancy. Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah.
What's your 2 cents?
My thing is am I way wrong? Like I'm not shipping anybody on the show except I I'm kind of, am I shipping Nancy and Steve? I think I
I love
am.
Nancy and Steve. I'm not going to front. I think it's so funny that like Natalia and Charlie have this relationship in real life and none of their chemistry felt like it really translated onto the screen. Like Jonathan and Nancy have always felt a little like, what are we doing here? At least it's like season one. That said, I'm going to tell you, Grace, that scene in like their weird like Blade Runner android milk room and like everything melting, like the non-breakup, the
Yeah.
unengagement scene. That's,
Mhm.
I think it's one of the best scenes of the series, man. Like
I
I
like
thought
it
that
too.
they hit so many great strides. It felt so kind of like authentic in the midst of this weird like supernatural back job. Nancy as just a character achieving like full peak Ellen Ripley.
Yeah.
Like by the end of this thing, man, she is like full tilt Sarah Connoring. The like I love Nancy so much. Jonathan, like, look, man, I feel like they just lost the thread on this guy a while ago and didn't know what to do with him. I'm okay with the breakup. I'm fine with her not being with Steve. I really like the idea that like no, man, we need to figure ourselves out. That again, there's like a little bit of authenticity to the experience of being a young adult there that I felt like translated.
Yeah, I feel like the problem I have can't be resolved in the finale because the real problem is that like Nancy and Jonathan shouldn't be together sooner. And so I think it's fair to like not rush to Nancy and Steve being together. And also you can have this like, we have to figure out who we are. I actually really love that. So I'm like actually fine with the way it plays out because, and again, I think like for what we got, I do like the scene where I think the like, not proposing scene is great. I know a lot of people were like, should they have died there? Like, no, none of these characters. None of these characters should have died. In my opinion,
If
none of
they
them should have
died,
died.
like I wouldn't have been surprised and I wouldn't have been angry to like lose some of the older kids necessarily. But I do think it's okay that they didn't die. I think the one person somebody noted it in our Discord over at Screen and Page today. The one person this season that didn't die that probably should have is Ted Wheeler. Like if you were just gonna like rip this guy to pieces and then like exit stage right, we don't see him again till the
Well,
graduation. It would have been okay if he died.
well, the only thing is I feel like everybody who I'm like, oh, they maybe could have died. They're too close to somebody who I think like
Would have
can't
had a
have some.
real fallout. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Jonathan dying means I don't think like Nancy can then be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like that
No,
is tough. I
Nancy
think.
and Will and Joyce. I mean, that's everybody,
Yeah.
right? At the beginning of the season, in the like Steve's gonna die paradigm, I was like, Steve's not
No.
gonna die, you guys. Jonathan's gonna die. Because if Jonathan dies, he's like a cascade that will like emotionally devastate so many people that are kind of really important to like getting all this stuff done. So I was kind of surprised. That said, like, I'm not dissatisfied with any of these people not dying. Like, I really am to the extent of like it's an Amblin Entertainment movie, man. The kids all live to the end, and that's okay.
And in my world where 11 did die, that her death has to matter
The
more and even
most.
the most. And so I think if you have anybody else die, then that kind of undercuts that 11 died. So I don't. And then the Steve thing for me, the biggest reason Steve can't die is because you can't have Dustin lose his bro again.
After
So
Eddie died, Steve was never
Steve
going to
can't
die, you guys. That's not Steve's
Yeah.
story. That was not Steve's story.
Okay, Robin. I think Robin is probably my favorite character. I feel like Robin I kind of lump in with like Lucas, where like comes in so great, and then I feel like does a little bit get underserved through which is like and I guess underserved is not fair because I think like I, I'm like gonna give credit to the Duffer Brothers that like they create such great characters. You're like, yeah, I want
Yes,
that person on the
they
show, and
create
then it's like,
incredible
oh
characters.
my god, now you have too many characters to
You
figure
haven't
out. So
even
like
mentioned him yet, but like the incredible revelation that is Delightful Derek this season.
Derek's fun. I like
I am
Derek.
so here for Derek Turnbow giving the like Eddie Munson figure to Vecna, suck my fat one twice. He saves Holly Wheeler and then like suck my fat one's Vecna a second time. To your point of like Maya Hawke is incredible. Robin is a great character. Like she was so funny this season, dude. The like it's too big, it won't fit. Steve hears that all the time and it doesn't stop him, does it, buddy? Like some of the Robin lines like destroyed me, Grace. The like the flux capacitor misdirect with Grace. The like Robin scene, like we could talk about the coming out with Will with like 17 people in the room, like fair to critique it. But the Robin scene with Will is pretty exceptional.
I
Right?
agree.
Like
All the Robin stuff
Tammy,
this
all of
season.
it. And
Yep.
and not for nothing, Taylor was talking about while they were in the theaters, people were literally yelling out, Robin is us. Like Robin very much became this
Fun.
like audience insert character, I feel like, through the finale, at least, in a certain way, to the extent that like she's giving the monologue of like, my friends graduate today. And like, that's like really emotional for me. It really like, it hits, it lands.
Yeah.
When you get to the scene of them all, the older kids on the roof of the Squawk, Maya
I
Hawke,
like it. I like it.
I loved it as well. And Maya Hawke was doing an interview afterwards, after everything had aired, where she talked about like that day, people, you know, actors talk about being present in a moment and being present in a scene to like experience what is happening in the moment and not be so caught up about like what's written in the script or the stage direction or whatever else, what you think it's going to look like once it hits the camera, but to be in the moment. She's like, and gosh, for as long as I've been doing this, for as hard as I've tried to like get good at this, that day I really learned what that meant, because my like emotions were just so bleeding in to everything we were feeling. The Duffer Brothers talked about like, dude, we've worked for Joe Keery for 10 years. We have never seen this guy cry. He's up there like just trying to keep it together. Like that, like authentic emotion translating through the characters. Like I felt that and I loved it. And that's part of why I think that the epilogue and the coda is as strong as it is, that it was well written and like very well realized. But Robin is like a gem, and it's so delightful to have included her here. To imagine that like she started in that Scoops All Way outfit once upon a time. Like what a coup, man.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like, well, there's kind of two last. I'll lump at least two of them together, which is you have Henry Creel, Vecna, Jamie Campbell Bower. I think he is incredible, and maybe it's going to be. I think he might actually sneakily end up being the most successful of anybody who's on the. Like, there's some like I guess Maya Hawke already like fair like kind of has an acting.
Maya Hawke's
career
like
that's
touching some like really interesting projects. Sadie Sink like reaching into the MCU is going to like give her access to a lot of other projects that are going to be interesting. Like we'll see some folks come out of it. I mean, some of them are like chasing these music careers, right? Joe Keery is like going viral, dropping songs. You got to wonder how much acting they're going to do. But I think you're onto something. Yeah,
I think he's just so good, and he actually is also not like he was given so much previously this season. He doesn't need to be much more than big evil bad.
Just that one scene of him watching the child version of himself in the cave, right? The like facial reactions, the please leave me alone, get out of my head. Like there's weight there. And I mean, he's not a young guy, right? He's 37, man. He's been doing this for a while.
Not.
He is. He sure is. He's 37 years old. I was shocked when I learned that. I thought he was like late 20s, early 30s, but well preserved actor, as it were. But what I mean to say by that is just that like he's done a lot of work that is not nearly as high profile as this, right? This feels like one of those projects that like, oh, okay, people are paying attention. I'm pretty sure he's showing up in the Rings of Power next season. I think he's already been cast, which like is, I think, a coup for them. It feels like he's better than like most everything they have going on. He's extraordinary. And I was really taken with what he did in season 5. I know people came away from season 4 impressed with him. Like, oh, Vecna. I was more impressed with him this season. All of like the Mr. What's-It stuff and like the kind of variants of characters he had to play. Shades of like Tatiana Maslany off or Orphan Black type stuff.
Agreed. I feel like Holly Wheeler is getting some hate that I don't really care for. The one thing that I would say is that I do feel like one thing that's maybe a little in retrospect is like you had somebody who was set up to, I think, who could have done the Holly Wheeler role to some degree, which is Erica. You had sort of like the younger sibling character who's been established as a character, and to not put her in and as like in that role maybe
but that did mean that we got to have Erica and Mr. Clark, which was magnificent.
Yeah, that is true. And then the other thing is like Erica is so confident that I think you need like the purpose of, you need somebody who has as the character growth of Holly to like be confident enough to like sort of start leading the rebellion. But I know people are feeling like maybe a little bit like, why did we do this whole thing? But I think paired with the final moment of like the kids coming downstairs to play D&D, the next generation, I like it. I'm a sucker for it. So
I thought Nell Fisher did a good job. I liked that like passing on of the torch, the epilogue, like, you know, a couple of folks talking about it in our Discord invoked Toy Story 3 of like the absolute crushing weight of that, of Holly coming down the stairs. That's the part where they really came apart. I can appreciate that like maybe we over-indexed, like when we're just looking at pure runtime and we go back and revisit, like Holly got a lot of just footage of season 5 focused on her that like we could have put some some scenes in maybe that might have like, you know, acted as a solve to some of the frustrations that we were feeling elsewhere. That said, I did think like Nell Fisher did a great job with what she did. Like she carried the role pretty heavily. And I don't know. I liked that plot line. Like A Wrinkle in
Me too.
Time was a precious book to me as a kid that I'm trying not to like go off on every tangent and rabbit hole, but like the inclusion of A Wrinkle in Time, I think was brilliant. I love the kind of like it getting the Kate Bush treatment, a little bit of running up that hill and like people going out, reading it, buying it, exploring it. And I appreciate just having a new generation of kids. Like, I think there's probably some concern. There's been a lot of commentary about the actress playing Erica. Looks like she's like about to graduate college. You know, it's like, but that said, I'm with you. I would have liked more Erica this season.
Yeah, but and then again, it's like, what are you gonna cut? Like, what are you gonna cut? And I do think it's important for there to be, like, I guess, like this is their job, is to write something that is some stakes for them to like continue, like to pressure them to go find Vecna and figure out a plan. But like, I like that all the kids being there, being that purpose. So I'm not and I like all the stuff in volume 1. And then this is the result of it in volume 2. So
I was going to say the volume 1 stuff of like everything, like the real thing of using Holly is that you have fresh eyes. Like to get that Spielbergian thing, you need that like wonder, horror, and they go pure poltergeist, right? Like it's directly poltergeist. Carol Ann, like the closet sucking her in when the Demogorgon comes in. That like is going to frame us up for this whole conflict in Mike's house, which has been such a central location, and Karen and all of it. Like I get why they used Holly, but yeah.
Okay, and then I almost like feel like we could skip over. I do feel like it's a tremendous waste of Linda Hamilton to be Dr. K, but like, you know, once you like in retrospect, when I rewatch the show and knowing that she's just basically like on the hunt, whatever, it's fine.
She became much less scary when she didn't have a laboratory of scary monsters to like intimidate people. Those first scenes are like, oh my God, dude. She's like dissecting that thing on the table. She's got the tentacles choking out Hop and like the thermodynamic box or whatever. She was pretty intimidating. I had a very weird like Christmas break, Grace, where I just rewatched all the Terminator movies because I was in like in a Linda Hamilton state of mind, you know? And I came back for like the part 3 thing. I'm like, yeah, Linda Hamilton. And I was like, well, I guess. I mean, like, I appreciate just like not for nothing. If you were going to cast a nobody, no name actor there or Linda Hamilton, give me Linda Hamilton.
That's true.
Because like it is honoring this thing that Stranger Things has done with like Paul Reiser and all of them, and Sean and like Matthew Modine and all of these kind of classic 80s actors, Robert Englund, right? So like to that extent, I do think like, you know, the military could have had some more teeth. I would have loved the 30-second scene of Murray, like, this is why we're all going home tonight, telling Dr. K what's what. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's fair. Yeah, I do feel like Matthew Modine not being on the show anymore is actually like kind of like it's where you're missing the threat of
was a huge loss. They wanted to like layer these antagonists, but like one too many. It's a good instinct, but like I don't know, Lieutenant Akers and his whole like kind of psycho hunting them down. There was like definitely some missed shots from the military angle this season.
Okay, wrap up soon. The one thing I feel like we'll get like last thoughts in a minute, but before that, I do want to. There's been some things that I have seen online that I have to admit that I'm a little like. Everyone's on the internet too much, which is actually there's a secret another episode.
Conformity Gate. It was supposed to release yesterday, Grace, but fear not.
Oh, it didn't happen?
Fear not. Well, because yesterday was like a ecclesiastic Christmas, I believe, Little Christmas as it is known colloquially.
Okay.
And so like that was the true Christmas episode. And when like presented with the suggestion, Conformity Gate was this collective like hive mind theory that is happening out there on the internet that according to like the misdirection, some of the frames in the trailers that didn't appear during season 5, some of the closed plot holes that were left open. The suggestion is all of episode 8 and the happy ending that we got are an illusion put into our main characters' minds by Vecna. And then in fact, the 9th and final real episode will air, Conformity Gate, showing us what really happens to everybody and tying up all the loose ends. It was supposed to air yesterday on Ecclesiastical Christmas. It did not. There was some suggestions. Don't worry, it's coming next week on the 12th. But as of today, you guys, like Netflix is going out of their way on all of their accounts to be like,
Please
All of
stop.
the
It's not
episode
happening.
of Stranger Things are airing now. You got the actors, the Mr. Clark actor out there, like, guys, I'm sorry. That's it. That really is it. That really is it. The suggestion that like they put the like 8th episode in movie theaters and then they're going to release a
Yeah.
ninth
No.
secret episode
No.
to
No.
like
No. No.
actually piss off all the people who went to do that on their New Year's Eve. Like, it's just not happening. But I think that brings me back to this thing I talked about earlier, which I think like there was a huge young audience that glommed onto the show. The show was designed for me, for like middle-aged people who grew up in the 80s and have all of those nostalgic touchstones. It was a show about kids, but not for kids. And somehow along the way, it captured a young audience who have grown up with it. And I think that there's this really devoted, really passionate fan base of Stranger Things for whom this is one of the first like major like loves in the like space of art and entertainment that they have ever found in their life. One of the first shows that like became their whole personality, Grace, you know, and like to that extent, they're having a really hard time with the ending. Ending things is hard, you guys. Like, it's really hard. It is rare that you get a good ending to like a series of TV that goes on for as long as this does over 10 years. But like, I think it's the exception, not the rule. And I think this is more good than bad. So I hope the people that are like, love the show, really unhappy, find solace over time, because conformity gate is not real. And I don't think it's happening. And people are already pretty mad that it's not happening.
It's absolutely not happening, which is hilarious because the only reason people have their expectations up is because of they have themselves to blame, that they thought that this is a real thing. It's not happening. You know what it feels, again, Rich, extremely D&D, which is when the DM has this like, oh, I'm going to do this thing the players will never see coming. And then if they were to do it, it would be so unsatisfying. This thing of like, that was a fake ending would be so bad. Don't do it. Even if you have, definitely.
Don't say it elsewhere. It's not a snow globe, you guys. No saying elsewhere. Saying elsewhere bad.
If you have the 9th episode, can it. Put it in the garbage. You don't need it. There is Stranger Things Tales from 85 coming, right? The animated
Stranger Things Tales from 85, and the Duffers are in the writer room as of Monday this week working on a spin-off series, Grace. The spin-off series, apparently, according to what they said, no carryover characters, no crossover characters, not going to be anything to do with Hawkins or the 80s. Okay, but it is going to explore some more of the lore. I don't know how much of the coverage across this season you spent talking about Stranger Things: The First Shadow, the stage play.
Mike talked a little bit about it. We went into it in volume 1, I think, in the volume 1 recap about. Did we do it in the volume 1 recap? Yeah, I believe we did. About how much
like
it
catastrophic timing that they released this before season 5. Where if they released it now, all those conformity gate people would be like hype to go get more lore. But because they released it before season 5 and it gave us all this lore that was slowly revealed across season 5, for those of us who like saw the play or did research on it because we thought it would be important, we had like a whole lot of the details and the revelations of this season like already presented to us. Like I was presenting theories before the season had aired about where the season would go that I had listeners like, that's crazy. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think the play, nonetheless, Tales from 85 seems interesting. The play is still out there. London's West End on Broadway, Stranger Things: The First Shadow. They're working on the spinoff. The spinoff's going to explore some of the magic rock and what happened to young Henry in the cave, but just within the context of like the mystery and the kind of mind flayer and the greater lore there. Part of me like winces and is like, I am so not here from this. Like I am cynical. I am inherently pessimistic about things like the Rings of Power. I'm not inclined to like them. Then I hear Matt Duffer and Ross Duffer talking about like, can we be honest? We love making this show. Making this show is the most fun thing that we do in our lives. Releasing the show is stressful and difficult and arduous, and making the show is our happy place. So we want to go back to making a show. And like, that's hard because like it kind of got me. I think they kind of got me. I'm like, all right, let's see what you got.
But they only have 4 months because then they're leaving for Paramount.
Apparently, but they're not going to be the showrunners of this. I think that they're just breaking story and outlining in the writer's room. They are not supposed to be like the showrunners from everything that I understand. They are like overseeing this for another set of showrunners to then take over and manage on Netflix.
Trying to debate whether I feel
where it goes, you know,
better or worse about that. Because there's part of me that feels like if they are involved, maybe they would have the restraint to not like, you know, it's like somebody else is like, ooh, we have the toys now. Like you guys left for Paramount and now like actually here's secretly like 40-year-old 11 because the show is set in Ireland or wherever she's hiding, or if they're not involved, are they not tempted to like?
They have been very fervent, and I'm going to just be really candid. I think they're going to regret saying all of this, but they have very like vociferously said in all of the interviews, we are not rebooting.
No.
That would seem like a sad cash grab. And it's like Duffer Brothers, 15 years from now, I got a bad feeling about this.
Wait till you see how much cash you can grab. Wait till you see how much money they give you.
Real bad feeling about this, Grace. I think like circle 2049, we're doing the Stranger Things redux,
Can I tell you that like the reason why I'm so in the camp of like 11 is dead is because I only have so much time before 11 shows up in something, and it's like she never does.
Yeah, so you just want to exist in that space until you're guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already just going to go to the space of like, no, she's always been alive, you idiots. Like, were you watching what I was watching back then? Like, she was obviously alive. And then, I've known the whole time.
And then the problem is, I'll be mad, but I only have myself to be mad at because I'm the one who believed that she was dead. So, okay, we'll wrap up. Very fun. If people want more
humorously, like my final note here, the Duffer Brothers did talk about like actually the one spinoff we really want to do. We want to get Jonathan and Nancy, Steve and Robin, and we want to film Jonathan's consumerism movie.
Okay,
we had so much fun.
That'd be great.
They said that they like spent the whole day on top of that radio station, just like breaking the story to Johnny's shitty consumerism movie. I'm like, oh my God.
I love
there was like connection between that and the Mind Flayer because the weird scientist with the rock is telling young Henry it will consume all. It will consume.
I love this is a thing we made that's in the it's like one layer deep in terms of like we made the movie
Jonathan's movie.
I love that. Okay. If people want way more Stranger Things season 5 coverage, Rich, you did a full recap of every season, a rewatch, and you did a full recap of volume 1 and volume 2, and like 2.5+ hours on just the finale. Am I correct? I'm correct in saying that?
So we did like the full recap of all the seasons. Most of the podcasts are me going back through like deep cut with the Easter eggs. I will give you every little Easter egg and like a detail homage in all 5 seasons of Stranger Things. Taylor and I deep covered season 5. We had very long podcasts. We were doing a solid 2.5 hours for like every one of these segments. I think we did 2 podcasts for the volume 1 episode. So if you want like a deep dive of Stranger Things podcast coverage, go check it out at Screen and Page, at Screen Page Pod. That's our socials. You can follow Instagram, Blue Sky. There's a link tree in the bio to those socials that'll take you to the Discord. What Did I Miss is our podcast where we go back and cover all the media that made us, so to speak. Grace, we're doing a What Did I Miss Stranger Things syllabus to fill the Stranger Things shaped hole in our heart after the season has ended. So Taylor and I are going to be watching E.T. the Extraterrestrial next week and breaking that down on What Did I Miss. We're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff like Red Dawn and Close Encounters of the Third Kind and a lot of these 80s movies that made up the DNA of Stranger Things that Taylor has never seen.
Very fun. And we'll tease it. You and I, Rich, are going to be recapping over on Screen Page Pod some television that comes out pretty soon. So
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Grace. Yeah.
My final thoughts on it. I actually really love chatting with this and feel like this is the type of thing where like my opinion of it maybe went up. I think I totally agree. I think the thing that I sort of like honed in on the most from what you said is Stranger Things is a show that has a million good ideas that are genuinely like incredible ideas. You think about like, just some of the lasting things that we got out of this show, not just from the final season and the final episode, but the alphabet lights, the string lights, the Robin in the Scoops Ahoy costume, like so much of the visual. I actually loved the end credits of the show and getting to go back, and there's so many great things from the show. I think that like my expectations were really high, and I think that I can see where the Duffer Brothers have some flaws, but I also see where their strengths are in terms of many of the things when we talked about sort of like bouncing around to each individual person and being like, oh yeah, like this idea in this story and why they ended it with that thing. You can think about like Mike wrapping up the D&D story and then telling the story about 11. You can think about the Hopper speech to like so many really good ideas in there that I actually think for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with what we got, even if, it was the biggest show on earth. And so everybody had expectations that were through the roof, Rich. So that's my final thoughts on Stranger Things, I think.
I think that I'm as high as I am because I came in with lower expectations.
Right.
You know, I took that Rob Cisternino school of like low expectations is the key to happiness, and it really did serve me well. I think the Duffer Brothers do have these great ideas, and they don't always necessarily like dive into the details of them, and that's part of what the frustration is. I would love to see. I'm excited to see what they do next because I think these are relatively young creators. I mean, this is like they've certainly learned a lot on this project, but I think that they only have room to grow. I think that one of the real joys of Stranger Things is this incredible ensemble spiraling out of the show and getting to track what these kids end up doing and succeeding at and struggling with and achieving over the course of their careers. But really, at the end of the day, like after 10 years of this like emotional journey, I don't know. It was pretty fun. It was a fun ride. It was not the most flawlessly executed television show, but if you want to go watch a flawlessly executed television show that begins with the premise of a missing child, I would advise you to go check out the German series streaming on Netflix right next to Stranger Things, Dark. 3 seasons, in and out. Go watch Dark, and you will get the experience that you maybe feel like you didn't out of Stranger Things. That said, I'm really happy with the series overall, and I really appreciate you having me in here to talk about it. I know some of the feedback from our pods over at Screen and Page has been like, I'm a little bit bummed out that nobody's liking it as much as I am, and I'm glad that you guys are having fun. And so we are pretty positive and high on it, and it's been fun to offer a little bit of a refuge for the people that don't want all the critiques and the criticism.
Amazing. Okay, Taryn and I doing Tastemakers. Taryn bumping around every other week. In the meantime, I'm going to be filling in the gaps with doing more spoiler-filled thoughts. So I'm trying to arrange a guest to come talk about Pluribus next week. So look out for that. I'll do a full spoiler recap of season 1 of Pluribus, which was, I think, highly enjoyable and very interesting and be fun to talk about. I'm on social media at High from Grace. I am recapping Dark over on Pop Heist. I'm going to be recapping Survivor 50 as well as The Traitors each week over there on Pop Heist. So check that out. And I'll be back in the future with more television coverage. Thank you so much, Philly, for joining. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.